Mark Davis, Texas fill-in guy. No, wait a minute. Ed Morrissey is also a Texas fill-in guy. How geographically precise do we have to get? All right. I'm in Dallas-Fort Worth, technically in Irving, right by the eastern border of the DFW airport. It's the building where the Salem News Channel, Salem Radio Network has its headquarters. It's where I do my happy morning show each day on 660 a.m. The Answer for Dallas-Fort Worth and North Texas. We had a great time yesterday. I anticipate nothing different today. I anticipate plenty of different material because there's been a whole new day of news. Boy, do we have things to talk about. Additional layers of people saying things about the upcoming Trump and Putin summit. Where's Zelensky going to be? How does that work? How do you rope some European leaders into this thing? That may happen. What do you want to have happen? These are some things I want to have you thinking about and bringing to us at the Hugh Hewitt Show. Phone number 1-800-520-1234, 1-800-520-1234. I'm going to toss a couple of things out here. The great Noah Rothman from National Review is going to be with us on our very next segment. I'm going to bounce a few hot topics off of him. And then you and I are going to go to town on various things involving Ukraine and Russia. What do you want to have happen from this summit? It's already happening. D.C., I told you yesterday, D.C. is already safer. How do I know 1,200 miles away? Because it's a law of physics. More cops equal less crime. If you have 800 National Guard guys strategically, festooned out over the District of Columbia, a whole lot of criminals are going to go, maybe we should make other plans. And it is happening as we speak. President Trump had a news conference just in the last couple of hours, as a Trump press conference will do. It headed off down all kinds of delightful rabbit holes, and we've got some audio and video from that. The original occasion, it was to observe the 90th anniversary of Social Security. Ah, yes, FDR. Thanks, FDR. I am, and look, I'm only being partially snarky. I am reading, you ready for Mark's book list? I forget the author. You can find the title. It's The Accidental President. It's about Harry Truman. The Accidental President, which is kind of an interesting way to put it. It's not meant as a slight to Harry Truman. Harry Truman never wanted to be president. He was freaked out about the very notion of becoming president, which he pretty well knew he would when he was put on the ticket in 1944. And of course, then Roosevelt promptly dies in April of 1945, and boom, Truman's president. And it is nonetheless, and necessarily filled with all kinds of the history of the time, of what had happened in the 30s and what was going on leading up into the 40s. So in roughly that period, Social Security was about 10 years old when Roosevelt died down there in Georgia. And now it's 90. I'm going to spend some time talking to you about what we think of that. Social Security is not technically an entitlement program per se. You are entitled to getting some of your money back. Has that ever worked well? Is it a Ponzi scheme? I'm 67. I ain't drawn on it yet, and a lot of people are saying, Mark, you probably should because it may be collapsing soon. Oh, great. There's something else to worry about. But the overall argument that sometimes happens is if Social Security had never happened, would we have seen millions of people starve and die in the street? Or would we have done what we did before, which was look after ourselves, plan for our future, figure out how we were going to do what we were going to do, figure out what retirement would look like, and do it on our own merits, and do it making our own plans like grown-ups, and not expecting the government to step in and do everything for us with a forced retirement plan that steals is so incendiary. I'll go with steals a ton of our money and says, hey, we'll keep this, and then trickle it back to you when you reach a certain age. Really? Do you know what I could have done with that money? And wouldn't you join me in saying the very same thing? Imagine every dime, every penny that has been taken from you in Social Security taxation. Let's hop into the time tunnel. For me, go back about 50-ish years in my working history, and let me have every dime. Now, if I could have blown it all in Vegas, but I wouldn't have. Maybe you would have. Okay, not you. You're smart enough to be listening and watching here. We're talking about other people. Some folks might have totally blown it, and then we would need some kind of social safety net, one presumes, to take care of people dumb enough, reckless enough, unfortunate enough, whatever. But aren't we doing that now? We have that social safety net now. It would exist only to take care of those folks who had not properly envisioned their own future. Now, there's a little bit of human nature that if you know that the government will ultimately take care of you, then you'll blow it all in Vegas or blow it all on, lottery tickets or why is it all gambling? Blow it all on drugs, blow it all on, whatever. And people, there will always be reckless people. There will always be people who are not doing the right thing. But I don't know. It's kind of a thought experiment. I would have absolutely done better. You probably would have too. Would the nation have done better if FDR had not hatched this cockamamie scheme? Do I want to go there? In 1935, Social Security at 90. Let's take a look. President Trump is about 11 years younger than that and looking quite youthful. I'll tell you what, he talked about Social Security. That was at least to begin. Let's go to cut 13, where President Trump, just within the last couple of hours, was talking about what they're doing to the Social Security rolls.
Benefits, we've already kicked nearly 275,000 illegal aliens off of the Social Security system. These are people, many of them have already left the country, and yet we were sending them checks all the time. And 275,000, and that number is now even larger than that, Frank. It's an unbelievable job. And what that's doing is making the system strong. It's making it strong.
And the other thing about Social Security, being a government program, it is, of course, filled with fraud and waste and abuse. In cut 15, here was President Trump talking about trying to do something about that.
12.4 million names listed in the Social Security database that were over 120 years of age, meaning you were breaking records, because I've never heard of anybody at 125. There were nearly 135,000 people listed who were over 160 years old, and in some cases getting payments. So somebody's getting those payments, and we're after that.
So the news conference began with President Trump riffing on a few things about Social Security, but then, oh my, it became quite the multi-topical festival. So we've got him, listen, we got plenty of time. We're going to have him talking about Elizabeth Warren. We're going to have him talking about the mayor of D.C. We're going to have him talking about just a wide variety of things. And by the way, we are going to be talking about a wide variety of things. Here in Texas, you may be wondering, hey, Mark, what's the latest on those fleeing wayward Democrats? Well, they have folded like a cheap suit. And one of my favorite headlines was the Dallas Morning News today, where they said that as the Democrats are coming back, and both sides are claiming victory. Both sides are claiming victory. Well, the Republican victory is clear. We played the waiting game. Governor Abbott, Attorney General Ken Paxton, Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick all said, we know you all are coming back. We know you're coming back. Just wake us up when you come back. The Democrats are saying that they have carved out something resembling victory by increasing awareness of the tyranny at play in Texas as we try to get ourselves, oh, heaven forbid, five more congressional seats. Compare that to California, Illinois, New England. My suggestion is the whole thing has backfired. They created awareness, all right, of the degree to which Democrats have been gerrymandering like fools in other states across the country. Mark Davison for you, Noah Rothman next, and you're right afterward. Grab a line, we'll talk to you.
Hold it right there. I'm back from vacation. Not really. I pre-recorded this on Friday. It's my Relief Factor segment because I take Relief Factor with me on vacation, just like I take it every day on this program. And we're going to remind you every hour, even when I'm out on vacation, that Relief Factor does indeed work. If you take it every single day, you will feel much better because it works with your body's anti-inflammatory system to reduce the minor aches and pains that come with exercise and aging. You should be doing the former. You're definitely doing the latter. Every day, Relief Factor means more and more to a comfortable life. Stop using the over-counter meds. Try it the old-fashioned way. Icarian curcumin with Veratron Omega. And the starter pack, $19.95, gets you 3 weeks of Relief Factor. You take 3 on the first day, every day for the first week, 2 on the second week, every day on the second week, and then 1 on the third week, and then forever after. 1-800, the number 4 in the word relief, 1-800, the number 4 in the word relief, or visit their website, relieffactor.com. Find that starter pack for $19.95, less than $1 a day at relieffactor.com.
Let me tell you what we're going to do.
Almost
Musically here.
cut my hair.
We're going to observe a couple of birthdays. That is David Crosby on Deja Vu and Almost Cut My Hair. Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young.
Happened just the other
He
day.
passed away, a couple of years ago? Probably the most famous rock star ever to block me. The only rock star ever to block me. I don't engage with famous people on Twitter. What purpose is there in that? But he had said something particularly stupid, I think, about nuclear arms in the 60s or something. And I said, blah, 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 blah. David Crosby has blocked you. I thought I wore that like a badge of honor. So God bless him. Great talent. Got to compartmentalize. But later on, we're going to be doing number one records from 30 years ago, 40 years ago, 50 years ago, 60 years ago. Big fun. Always a great time. And I'm driving around listening to Hugh Hewitt, and he's talking to Noah Rothman. And I get that thrill because I'm doing the show right now. Senior political writer at National Review. Noah, welcome. How you doing, sir?
Doing very well. Thanks for having me.
Nice to have you. I think like moments ago, like while I was doing the opening segment, you posted the column, Trump has something to prove on Russia. Like what?
Well, we're just looking at the Pew Research data. Pew has this big survey out about how the president's doing 6 months into his term, or rather half a year into his term, a little more than half a year into his term. And they assessed a lot of elements of the Trump presidency, including his various foreign policy initiatives, and there are many. Right down at the bottom of the list is handling on Russia. Democrats haven't really moved at all, but independents have, and Republicans have. Republicans have soured on the president's approach to Russia. Not by much, single digits, but it's nevertheless going in the wrong direction, and it's approaching double digits. And I think that's an assessment that's born of Americans' experience with this president's approach to this issue, which has been very inconstant. With the outset of this administration, it seemed like the administration wanted to put a lot of pressure on the Zelensky government, on Kyiv, and it subsequently pivoted and started putting a lot of pressure on Putin. All the while, Pentagon policy and State Department policy has reflected this rather mercurial approach to this conflict. So you can forgive voters for not knowing where the president is coming from. And he's going to come to this summit now with a big agenda item, which is to secure peace in some form or fashion. And then he's going to hold a joint press conference alongside Vladimir Putin. And the last time that happened, in Helsinki in 2018, it was a debacle for the president. According to Republicans in Congress came down real hard on the president at the time for siding with Russian intelligence assessments, and Vladimir Putin's claim, just simply outright stated, that he has never once interfered in American politics, which is just unbelievable on his face. Now, if the president is susceptible to that kind of flattery and subversion, and he may well be, he could be setting himself up for yet another situation in which Republicans think they have this guy pegged, think they know what he's thinking on Russia and Ukraine, and he just throws another curveball at them. And that inconstancy wears on you after a while. It's something this administration should be very conscious of, at the very least.
So if indeed Republicans are shifting in a unfavorable way toward what they expect from Trump on Russia, let's spend a moment on what Republicans expect from Trump on Russia. What do you think? What does conservatism want of him to come out of this conflict?
Well, we have a category problem here, right? Conservatism versus Republicans and Republicanism, and there used to be a lot more overlap there. There isn't necessarily now. There are those within the Republican Party who do favor an extroverted American presence on the world stage, who believe that Russia's geopolitical interests are at odds with America's, and that's a zero-sum game. If they win, we lose, and vice versa. There are others within the Republican coalition who are represented in this administration at some rather high-level positions, who don't believe that that conflict exists, or at least it should not exist, that a lot of our interests have been overly defined in Europe, especially in the East, and that the degree to which we have committed to this conflict is reflective more of Western Europe's interests, less than the United States. I think that's a distinction with less of a difference than they do, given our military commitments, our treaty-bound commitments to mutual defense. But there's an argument to be had there. Nevertheless, this president has both the devil and the angel on his shoulder. These people are both whispering in his ear, and he does seem to be convinced by whoever is speaking to him at a particular given moment. I don't think he has strong views on the conflict. I think his strong views are toward peace and the preservation and securing of peace. But I don't think he really is totally set on what the contours of that peace should look like. And a lot of people are telling him what they believe it should look like. We don't know, I think, really what the version of Donald Trump's peace would look like in Eastern Europe. I suspect we're about to find out on Friday. And it's fraught, Symmetry with the Russians is fraught. There's a lot of presidents who have been rolled by the Russians. Kennedy got rolled by the Russians. Joe Biden got rolled by the Russians. To a certain degree, I would contend that Ronald Reagan had a problem when he sat down across from Gorbachev at Reykjavik. That summit ended in a disaster from his perspective because he thought he had an agreement, and all of a sudden the Russians said, no, you don't, and he cut bait and walked away. That's the model to which the president should look towards, Reagan at Reykjavik. If you don't get what you want out of your counterpart in Moscow, cut bait, walk away, do not accept half a loaf. Because otherwise, the consequences for American geostrategy in the region could be dire.
So let's do something crazy and see what a compromise might look like. Zelensky wants his entire country back. That's not going to happen. Putin ostensibly wants all of Ukraine. That's not going to happen. Russia occupies X amount of Ukraine now, mostly about the 20% on the eastern side of the country. And maybe they get to keep that, which won't be enough for Putin. It'll be too much for Zelensky. And maybe we get something resembling a ceasefire. Maybe we get the agreement that Putin wants, that Ukraine will never say never, will not for the time being be a part of NATO. Ukraine probably wants Russia to pay for some rebuilding. Does this look like a list that we could be talking about in 48 hours when they come out of this thing?
It does, but I would be very upset if that was the list of particulars that we were discussing. Look, I think Putin's objective here is to secure, even with land swaps, he's willing to probably give up some of the moonscape that he has created along the line of contact in Ukraine in exchange for a lot of broader objectives. Foremost among them are some of the ones you listed. Ensuring that Ukraine does not have and will not have a foreign policy independent of Moscow's. That would mean no security guarantees, no future arms shipments, none of that. That's more important to Vladimir Putin than land, because we're talking about right now the second invasion of Ukraine, prelude likely to a third. And in a ceasefire condition in which Russia gets to rebuild its forces, restock its missiles, and engage in political subversion inside Ukraine as a prelude to a third invasion for all or parts of a rump Ukrainian state, that would be just fine with Vladimir Putin. I'm worried that it might be just fine to Donald Trump, too, if the objective is only peace for peace's sake. We have to be concerned with what that peace looks like and if it establishes the conditions for another war for Ukraine.
It's about 30 seconds. What does success, if total success is not possible, it's going to be murky. Yeah. But what developments, what takeaways will we need to say, you know what, Trump went out there and did a good job? What do we need to have happen to be able to say that?
That's tough to answer, and I would think whatever concessions that we are willing to give, and Ukraine is willing to give, and Europe is willing to give, they have to be matched with security guarantees from the United States, guaranteeing a tripwire presence, for example, inside Ukraine, European soldiers perhaps, but certainly treaty guarantees on paper that compel the United States to come to Ukraine's defense. That and only that has preserved the Baltics' independence, Poland's independence, Romania, Bulgaria, and it could work in Ukraine's favor too, but we have to be willing to commit to Ukraine and not say, well, we're just washing our hands of this thing and we're done.
Noah Rothman, National Review. Always a pleasure to hear you and really great to talk to you when I'm here. Thank you, Noah. Appreciate you, sir.
Thank you.
Now, let's talk to some of you. 1-800-520-1234. Talked about what I want, what you want. What do you want? What do you want to have happen within a couple of days? What do you want the headlines to be coming out of this summit? Grab a line, 1-800-520-1234. Well, Bryan Adams, Run to You. That's also where you got Summer of '69. That was the #1 album in America just 40 short years ago. That's right, Mark Davison for you, helping everybody feel old. All right, let's keep ourselves youthful with some vigorous talk about some topics going on, about some things that I'm thinking about leading up to the Trump and Putin summit. Somebody asked, how many times has Putin met with American presidents? It's an interesting number. Putin rose to power in like the middle of 2000, snuck in a meeting with Clinton, and then, to be a fly on the wall there. And then, since then, within Bush and George W., with George W. and Obama and Trump and Biden, and now this is going to make about 50 total meetings in about a quarter century of Putin's leadership. So we'll see how this one's going to go. Let me give you a moment to think about how your phone bill is going. Have you looked at your bill lately? How much data are you actually using? How much data are you buying? Have you looked at all the hidden fees, the surcharges? Have you noticed that your bill has gone up recently? Well, let's do something about that. After you check your bill, check out Consumer Cellular, where you get savings without sacrifice. Only takes about 20 minutes to switch. You'll get $25 off using Hugh25 as the promo code, Hugh25. Call 1-800-411-4454. 1-800-411-4454. Or log on to consumercellular.com/Hugh. New customers get a $5 credit on first 5 monthly invoices. Visit consumercellular.com/Hugh for details. And don't forget, if you're 50 or older, if you remember Bryan Adams, you can get 2 unlimited lines for $60. That's $30 each line unlimited. You can better manage your cost of living, your essential expenses by using Consumer Cellular, and you get $25 off using the promo code Hugh25. Savings without the sacrifice. Use the promo code Hugh25 or call 1-800-411-4454. 1-800-411-4454. All right, so what are both sides going to be looking for as we head into this summit? As Trump walks in and talks to Putin, what is Putin just going to lay out and say, Mr. President, here's what I want? He's going to want Ukraine to surrender the territory that Russia already has. Much of it is in, as I mentioned, about the eastern 25% of Ukraine. Some of it curves over to the northeast, all the way north of Kiev. Kiev, remember Peking, every pronunciation you ever learned is wrong. They change them every 10 years. Anyway, Kiev, whatever you want to do. And they're going to want all that to be kept. Russia is not going to want to give back 1 acre of what they have occupied. I don't know how that's going to go. Putin is going to say that Ukraine has got to abandon any aspiration of being in NATO, because the tricky thing about NATO is they got that kind of Monroe Doctrine vibe going, where if you attack one NATO member, it's like you've attacked us all, which is quite the heady prospect. And so Russia certainly doesn't want Ukraine to benefit from that level of protection from the world community. That one might fly. One thing I keep saying is that Ukraine must demilitarize. What? Doesn't every country have the right to have a military? What you do with it is what matters. Every country has a right to fight for and secure and protect its own sovereignty by having a military. I believe the Putin demand that Ukraine demilitarize is going to be one that's going to walk into a buzzsaw. Boy, if you think that one is a sticky wicket, I believe that Putin is going to, it's can I say ballsy on the radio and TV? I think I can, because give me a synonym. Gutsy, maybe that, well, whoops, too late. Putin is going to he's going to require, in order to say, okay, we're going to stop taking over stuff, we're going to stop killing Ukrainians, we're going to stop rolling through Ukraine, we are going to, you know what? I wonder if Russia might actually give a couple of square miles back if he can get the big enchilada that I think Putin really wants. I think the biggest enchilada is no NATO membership. He wants elections. Putin wants to demand, and this is kind of funny, how does Trump for that matter, demand that a country have elections? I mean, all you can do is say yes or no. And what I'm intrigued by is, how do you think those elections would go? You got any Ukrainian relatives, like, over there? How popular is this Zelensky guy anyway? So this is so that's sort of the Putin slate. What is Zelensky going to demand, as if he's in a position to demand anything? I think Trump made that clear in the Oval Office. You don't hold the cards. Tapping a couple of toes to the ladies of TLC, and here our adventure begins. Here our journey begins. Waterfalls was the #1 record in America 30 years ago. That's right, even making the Gen Xers feel old. #1 record in America, 1995. So we're going to go 85, 75, 65, 55 in the next few segments. So just get ready to hop in the time tunnel and see what the #1 records in America were 30, 40, 50, 60, and 70. Yeah. Oof. Years ago, even before I was born. Okay, so on the Zelensky list of demands. He's going to want a durable ceasefire before any kind of territory talks. There's a quote, I don't know if somebody can find this and tell me, I'll give credit every time I say it. Peace is not the result of when everybody lays down their arms. Peace is not, a ceasefire is not peace. Peace is what you get when the good guys win. Now that's been true of every war that America's been in. In this war, what's the definition of the good guys winning? Is Zelensky 100% the good guy? I mean, Putin's certainly the bad guy in this. There's shades of, black hats and white hats all over this. But until something satisfactory happens, a ceasefire is not enough. He's also going to want security guarantees. Okay, from whom? From his European neighbors, they seem willing. That's great. From America, I don't think there's much of an appetite anymore for Ukraine to be an American problem. Zelensky is going to want Russia to pay for damages caused by the war. Russia is a huge, lumbering, wounded third world country that is racked with economic challenges. I think that's going to be a tough sell. They're going to want the return of POWs and stuff like that. I think that'll work out fine. And Zelensky is going to want Trump to keep the sanctions on Russia. Trump's not going to keep the sanctions on Russia if Putin sufficiently does some of the things that Trump wants him to do. So, all right, I'll tell you what. Let's take a look. This was Philip Bump on MSNBC with Alex Witt, former Washington Post guy. Philip talking about how a Nobel Peace Prize might work its way into the mix here.
So, Philip, you have written an awful lot about what you call Trump's, quote, affection for Vladimir Putin. And we now know that there is going to be this one-on-one, just the two of them, as Peter was reporting. It's going to be only with translators. There will be no note takers in that meeting for the two of them. And the president seems to be saying all the right things to Putin at this point right now. Then you have President Zelensky and the Europeans. And what he has promised to them is that he is not going to start trying to divvy up territory in this meeting. He's only there to feel Putin out, see where things stand. What are the chances all that goes out the window and there's some divvying up that begins?
I think high. I mean, I think the Colonel's point about how Donald Trump has made this commitment is really the key point here, right? The Donald Trump said on the campaign trail, I'll have this thing wrapped up in 24 hours. I know exactly what to do. If I had been in office, it wouldn't happen in the first place. All of it was nonsense and transparent nonsense at the time. But now he has this pressure, this self-imposed pressure to deliver this thing that is not deliverable, particularly in the way he wants to deliver it, right? We've also seen the context. I think it's really important we started with that Helsinki discussion they had, because we know what happened there. He got in a room with Putin. It was just the two of them and some translators. And he came out and he was totally cowed by what Putin had said. And he said, oh, Russia didn't have anything to do with meddling in the election, which everyone knew was nonsense. And he said it at this press conference. And between the two of them, it was very obvious that Putin had the upper hand just in that. And, we've had this discussion about the extent to which Putin has prepared. He started this invasion of Ukraine in 2014, right? This is a long-standing thing. It has been a long-standing goal of his. And he knows exactly what it is that he hopes to accomplish. And Donald Trump, all he wants is he wants to have a Nobel Peace Prize just like Barack Obama. That's what he wants. He wants that on his shelf, right? And if he can come up with something that gets him close to that and convinces his base is close to that.
He thinks maybe might.
Yeah, I mean, he wants the accolades. He wants the accolades from his base. He wants the accolades, ideally, from the international community. And I don't think he really cares what that looks like if he thinks it gets him close to that. And I think Putin can probably convince him that he's getting close to that in whatever agreement they have.
Boy, you can take the boy out of the Post, but you can't take the Washington Post out of the boy, can you? About 45 seconds ago, did he say that he came out of the meeting, that Trump came out of the meeting, out of the meeting with Putin, and said that Putin did have anything to do with meddling in the election? Aren't we all awash in the realization finally that that's actually true? And I'm not talking about the degree to which Russian bots or Chinese bots or anybody's bots might have posted some stuff on Twitter or whatever. Sure, everybody was mouthing off in ways to do whatever they wanted to do to weigh in the arena of public debate. But Russia lies on the ash heap of discredited, and now it may be criminal enterprises. Let me ask you this. We got one segment left in this hour, and then a full segment at the next hour before we talk to Dave Weigel and Josh Krashour. But first, I'm interested in hearing from you. Have you been keeping track of some of the news over the last day of DNI Tulsi Gabbard releasing some things that indicate that her predecessor at DNI, James Clapper, one of her predecessors, was there in Obama land saying, look, this is a team sport. We all have to kind of get on the same page here. And what he's talking about, of course, is crafting the ruinously false narrative that President Trump was colluding with the Russians in some fashion. This was an attempt, and this was something that they offered as the Obama era was ending and the Trump era was about to begin. What does accountability look like from that for you? Will heavy iron bars slam behind anybody for this? 1-800-520-1234. 1-800-520-1234. Mark Davison for Hugh. More of you on the phone and lots more to come. Stick around.
Hi, it's Hugh Hewitt for AndrewandTodd.com. They are our sponsor from Sierra Pacific Mortgage. 888-888-1172. 888-888-1172. On the Friday that I left for vacation, Andrew sent me a note that interest rates are the lowest that they have been all summer. So just as you have to finally make a decision on a house, interest rates are working in your favor. Call Andrew Del Rey or Todd Avakian or Sierra Pacific Mortgage at 888-888-1172 and find out what works best for you. Whether you're a veteran, you don't want to put any money down. Whether you're a senior citizen and you want to get a reverse mortgage. Whether you're a first-time buyer and you want to use FHA, or you just want to buy a vacation house or a second home or an investment property. AndrewandTodd.com, 888-888-1172.
Thursday in progress on the Hugh Hewitt Show. 1-800-520-1234 is how you join us, and we would like you to join up with AmericanFederal.com. AmFed, there are a lot of good reasons to buy gold and silver. Banks sometimes fail. Digital currency can be crazy volatile. AmFed Coin and Bullion is my choice for precious metals. If you ask AmFed owner Nick Grovich, hey Nick, can you simplify the case for precious metals? He'll tell you a little story. When President Roosevelt, the previously mentioned President Roosevelt, recalled the gold in circulation and paid people with paper money, you got a $20 bill for a $20 gold piece. Sounds fair. Today, that $20 bill will give you a third of a tank of gas. The gold piece, $3,400-ish. So which would you rather own? AmFed Coin and Bullion. Nick's been in this industry over 42 years, and he's proud of providing transparency and fair pricing to build trusted relationships. So if you're interested in buying or selling, call Nick and his team, AmFed Coin and Bullion. Here's their number, 1-800-221-7694, 1-800-221-7694, or learn more at AmericanFederal.com. That is AmericanFederal.com. All right, let us wrap up this hour with some fresh, hot New York City mayoral poll numbers. A lot of people going, I don't live in New York City. What do I care? It's America's biggest city. It is a window to, it's the capital of capitalism, at least for the moment. And there's just something interesting happening. I believe that large urban settings have become pretty interesting talk show topics of late, haven't they, with regard to some things like crime and homelessness. So here's where it stands right now. And you may have heard, that there's this Islamist, socialist, communist, Zoran Mamdani, has a lead, which it's like a joke. An Islamist, a communist, and a socialist walk into a bar, and the bartender looks up and says, hey, Mr. Mamdani, what'll you have? Anyway, he has 44%. 44%. Now, not a majority, but a pretty large plurality. In second place at 25%, what's this doing for his ego? Former Governor Andrew Cuomo, who was pretty well bounced from the primary and came back and said, you know what? I'm going to run as an independent. Well, we'll see how that works out. The Republican Curtis Sliwa, who offered himself up against Mayor Eric Adams 4 years ago and was trounced because it's New York City, but put up a more than respectable showing, as he's doing now. Follow Curtis on X. He's just out there talking to real New Yorkers, talking about crime and common sense. Curtis has 12%. I think he'll do better than that in November. And boy, speaking of blows to the ego, Eric Adams is actually mayor, has the job now, 7%. Mamdani 44, Cuomo 25, Curtis Sliwa 12, Mayor Adams 7. I think that tells me that the largely liberal voting bloc of New York City is less upset with a real Republican than they are with a Democrat mayor who got a little too Trump friendly. Mark Davis, in for Hugh Hewitt. We're friendly all the time. Give us a buzz, 1-800-520-1234. We'll carry some topics into the next hour. Stay here. We're going to your calls here in just a second at 1-800-520-1234. We've talked a lot about things going on in the news, anticipation of the Trump-Putin summit. What's the definition of success? Is there already success being enjoyed on the streets of Washington? It appears there is. What do you think about this whole Social Security thing? How's that working out after 90 years, the anniversary of Social Security being observed? Is it a godsend that has saved many lives, or a Ponzi scheme that we should get rid of? And how's that going to go if anybody steps forward and actually suggests it? And we've talked a lot about the divulgences of the last day or two, in which Tulsi Gabbard, our director of national intelligence, has uncovered more evidence of treachery and skullduggery in those closing days of the Clinton regime, in which Clapper, Comey, especially Clapper, with these damning emails, more emails that refer to everybody staying on the same page. It's going to be a team sport, he said, as they craft a narrative that is designed to ruin Trump. Now, obviously, Trump won again. I mean, he completed the first term. Then there was that whole... Here, you want a question? Remember the talk shows of 2020? I do. We were miserable. Trump lost. A lot of people didn't feel like he lost. It was a rotten result. And I am and was filled with all the angst that accompanies that. Is there any denying that, I don't want to say I'm good with it now, but with what we have right now, Trump 2.0, this term of Trump is so much better than his second term would have been if he had won. You know that's true, right? You know that's true. Doesn't mean I've forgotten the degree to which, you could call it a steal if you wish, I call it gutlessness on the part of the Supreme Court not to accept the Texas challenge, which was my state and about 18 more, saying that, with states changing their election laws on the fly unconstitutionally, with various things happening from COVID panic, it rendered it an unacceptable result. And we accepted it. And that will forever, historically, always have been wrong. But wouldn't you take, let's say Trump, let's go back. 2020, Trump wins. Yay. His 8 years are finished. Who's president now? You know what America tends to do after 8 years of one party, tends to give you the other one. Would we be looking at, President Amy Klobuchar right now? I'll take right now, thank you. Your thoughts are welcome. All righty, speaking of thoughts, let's go. We are in Indianapolis, and we say hello to Carl. Mark Davis in for Hugh. How you doing, sir?
Hey, pretty good. How are you?
Good, thank you. Here's the part where you start talking.
Okay, on Russia. I knew that was something that the Democrats were throwing on the wall. I knew it was BS then. The thing is, now that everything has turned out like it is, and everybody knows the truth, your traditional stations, ABC, NBC, and CBS, if I can name them, it's like they walking away from the truth. They won't say, well, we made a mistake, or going to see them exactly what happened. But short as the story is, you're not going to get Hillary. I don't think you can get Hillary. I don't think you can get Obama, even knowing what Obama knew. There's things in the Constitution that he's going to be pardoned. He can get out of it.
Can I ask what you mean by get? You say we're not going to get Hillary or get Obama. What would it look like to
no charges.
Get
you can probably bring them up.
Yeah.
And Obama knew what he knew, and this is Hillary's crock of stuff. This is Hillary, and they know us. They know us, sir. You're not going to get Hillary because she was married to a president. It has nothing to do with it, but that has exactly everything to do with it.
Well, she has a lot of power on her own, and I think generally I think you're right. Because again, what's the definition of getting Hillary or getting Obama? Again, heavy iron doors slamming behind them. That was never going to happen. Lock her up, fun as it was to say, was sort of theatrical. What it was a cry for some type of accountability. it can be observed that Hillary received the harshest sentence possible from the court of public opinion when America said, you know what, ma'am, we don't ever want you to be president. That hurts worse than any ankle monitor. That'd have to be a big ankle monitor. That hurts worse than any probation she would have gotten or fine that she would have had to pay. As for Barack Obama, what will accountability look like for his team? Trump today, in his news conference that started out talking about Social Security and then went off in a dozen other directions, somebody asked him, Mr. President, what do you think about accountability for all these people involved in the treachery of forwarding this Russia narrative that was false and meant to defame and destroy you? And Trump gave the proper answer for right now, saying we're looking into it, and I believe they are looking into it. The only damage, the only accountability, and this is not a small thing, I think is going to be reputational. And you know what? I'm not looking for Obama or even Clapper to be dragged off to Rikers. If history simply records that these people did horrible things, craven political smears and outright illegal, criminal, sinister attempts to ruin the incoming Trump administration, then I'm prepared to be good with that. Because if the bar is set at somebody wearing prison stripes, I think you're going to be disappointed. Alrighty, we are in Omaha. Kevin, hey, Mark Davis in for Hugh Hewitt. Happy Thursday. How are you?
Good, Mark. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
I have a question. Isn't Putin wanted for war crimes, and he would be arrested if he shows up on American soil in Anchorage?
No, not by us. He's not. They're from Putin to any Soviet leader to any Chinese leader. They're all evil souls. They're all war criminals. That tends to be kind of rhetoric. It's not something that's actionable on American soil. It's not something that should be actionable on American soil. I think what we're trying to do right now is try to, and especially not when you're trying to coax out of Putin the kind of concessions that will bring the Russia-Ukraine war to an end. I mean, let's say we arrested Putin in Anchorage. What do we do with him, and what effect would that have? What do you think would happen?
I don't know.
I know, it's a good answer, proper answer, because me neither, and that ain't gonna happen. Alrighty, we let's say sit tight. Dave in Pittsburgh, don't move. We in a moment are going to talk to Dave Weigel about a few political things in the news and various other things. I want to talk to more of you about other things in the news. Phone number is 1-800-520-1234, 1-800-520-1234. Don't sneeze at the court of public opinion. I can hear people driving around going, oh, it's so disappointing. I really want these people to, serve jail time. Really rich, powerful political figures or private sector figures don't tend to cool their heels at the penitentiary. It tends not to happen. I mean, I know Epstein's in prison, but I'm not talking about just rich people go to prison. I mean, genuinely powerful figures, especially elected officials. I know we've had some elected officials go to prison, but don't undercut the degree to which having history record that you are a bad person. That's a sting. That's a sting that lasts longer than a jail term. Alrighty, Mark Davison for Hugh. Much more coming up, including your calls at 1-800-520-1234. Happy Thursday. Stay here.
Hold it right there. I'm back from vacation. Not really. I pre-recorded this on Friday. It's my Relief Factor segment because I take Relief Factor with me on vacation just like I take it every day on this program. And we're going to remind you every hour, even when I'm out on vacation, that Relief Factor does indeed work. If you take it every single day, you will feel much better because it works with your body's anti-inflammatory system to reduce the minor aches and pains that come with exercise and aging. You should be doing the former. You're definitely doing the latter. Every day, Relief Factor means more and more to a comfortable life. Stop using the over-counter meds. Try it the old-fashioned way. Icarian Curcumin with Veratron Omega. And the starter pack, $19.95, gets you 3 weeks of Relief Factor. You take 3 on the first day, every day for the first week, 2 on the second week, every day on the second week, and then 1 on the third week, and then forever after. 1-800, the number 4 in the word relief, 1-800, the number 4 in the word relief, or visit their website, relieffactor.com. Find that starter pack for $19.95, less than $1 a day at relieffactor.com.
Welcome to the musical time tunnel as we go. Last time, 1995, number one record was TLC Waterfalls, That Shout by Tears for Fears. Coming up, the number one records in America, 1975, 65, 55. Oh my gosh, what are we going to do? I'll tell you what we're going to do right now. Talk to a guy I've been reading in a lot of places for a long time, and that's Dave Weigel. Dave's currently writing at Semafor, Semafor. Semafor is awesome, and he's got a piece called How Trump's D.C. Takeover Divided the City's Democrats. But first, I want to do something that's even more present. Dave, you've been paying attention to Gavin Newsom's day. What is he doing? He held a rally, and he believes that Trump intentionally stationed ICE agents outside the rally. What's been happening while I've been doing this show here?
Well, there were ICE agents outside the rally in Los Angeles. He drew attention. He said they'll probably deny that it was intentional. He freelanced a little bit at the microphone as he was doing that. I am not there right now. I think there are reporters who can chase down what was happening, but wouldn't be surprising. And I think, let's say it was intentional. I don't want to speculate too much. That would say a lot about the dynamics and the two images that are competing with each other. Democrats think that people will eventually see, or right now we will eventually see armed men in camouflage, men in masks with military equipment walking the streets and say, this is not America and I don't want this. And the president clearly says that people see that and say, thank God, my city's being liberated from people like Gavin Newsom.
When you take a look at how charged the environment currently is, what's the definition of getting the upper hand, of winning this sort of political cycle? It certainly seems that on borders, and let's pivot over to the story you wrote about Trump's DC takeover, on borders, on crime, these seem to be sort of the 80-20 issues everybody's talking about, where Trump says things that are just obvious. Borders are good, crime is bad, and Democrats are thus painted into a corner in disagreeing with it.
Oh, and I would add homelessness. I just was noticing in D.C., Pramila Jayapal, former leader of the House Progressive Caucus, drew attention to how some of the president's orders involve getting homeless people off the streets in D.C. There's some questions about where they go. But her post about this is why Congress should pass my housing not handcuffs bill, which gives, I'm just pulling up the language so I get it right, which would protect the right for a, quote, homeless individual to, quote, conduct life-sustaining activities on public land. And there are 20 Democrats in favor of that. There are more than 20 Democrats in the House. That's less than 10% of the House conference agree with that. When I talk about division, division doesn't always mean 50-50. It's that there are some Democrats who have without being too glib, call it a 2020 mindset that the country is going to come around to progressive change. And there are Democrats who think voters are right. The party went too far in a couple of ways, and they need to be strategic about this. And in D.C., I was talking about the homeless part of it, Mayor Bowser, who I don't think is going to come out of this very politically popular in the city, has said that the city needs more police officers. She's clashed with the liberals on the D.C. council, who are more liberal than her, who wanted to decriminalize things like fair evasion, who did decriminalize fair evasion, which she vetoed, and that was a huge embarrassment. A number of times she has said the city needs more police funding, it needs more police. She does not welcoming Trump with open arms, but she's one of these Democrats whose premise, I think, if I can restate it for her, is that for people to trust that Democrats can run their cities, they need to feel like they're safe, and we're not there yet.
No, indeed we're not. And I'm keeping track of 14 things at once with summits and this and that and thus and such. But did I catch in D.C. that Mayor Bowser has taken leave briefly? Has she blown town for the moment?
Yeah, when I said that she's not popular at the moment, I think that's going to be part of it. She left the city. Local reporters broke this, and then everyone who asked for confirmation, they confirmed she had a commitment in Martha's Vineyard. She left. She's going to come back.
No, not Martha's Vineyard. A commitment in Martha's Vineyard. The optics gods are smiling.
No, it's terrible optics. I try to give you not to be opinionated, but how many times people need to learn this lesson? Don't go because look, there are a lot of people in DC mobilize right now who probably have family commitments they're missing. It's not very sympathetic to say, as a public figure, elected figure, sorry, I had something that's taking me out of this crisis and I need to go for a day. But yes, that is true. And yeah.
In your Semaphore piece, and by the way, how long have you been writing for them? Because that's just a great site, and you're a great contributor.
I appreciate
to them.
it.
And it's a fun place to go, and it's just a really wonderful compilation of all kinds of differing views. How long have you been there?
I helped launch it in October 2022. I joined September 2022. I didn't found it, but I was one of the early reporters who jumped on because I thought it would be a success, and I think it is. That was going to be the implication. You were saying.
It's a big part of my day, so I appreciate it.
Good,
and so in our last couple of minutes, let's dive into some of what you make in the most recent column about how the DC takeover it puts a wedge between, I guess, two types of Democrats. The Democrats who want to run their lives every day by, if Trump did it, it must be horrible. And sort of the old school normie Democrats who are the way the party used to be, where patriotism was okay, mentioning God was okay, being against crime was okay. Is that generation of Democrats dying out? They still exist to some level in D.C. They still exist in Congress to some extent.
It's a big topic. We don't have a lot of time to go over the topic, but yes, even in 2012, Democrats thought maybe they had bottomed out with the white working class because labor still endorsed Barack Obama. Republicans had an agenda of tax cuts and employer-friendly policies that were not necessarily good for workers. They have been very slowly adjusting, not very well so far, to the changes Trump wrought in the Republican Party. So Trump kept the social conservatism and changed where the party is economically on labor, et cetera. Not giving them everything Democrats did, but the tariff policies are some that Democrats wish they had done in power. Not all of them, but they wish they had been more aggressive in protecting American businesses. It's the Democrats' response when those people? They're torn because the dominant faction of the party, and this has been true now for 40 years, is it's more college-educated liberals who have certain views and certain life experiences that are alien from a lot of working class voters. And it's not that they're snobs and they can't stand those. Some of them maybe sometimes, but elected Democrats have just were in a haze in the Obama years thinking we don't need to change culturally. The country is becoming culturally more aligned where we are. Look at the success of popularity of gay marriage, for example.
Sure,
they have not adjusted to some of the conservative changes that happened with their old voters, with white working class voters and Latino voters. And that's one of the beats I end up covering a lot. Okay, is the party going to create space to say some of our candidates can you mentioned prayer. Some of our candidates might say that there are two genders. Is there any Democrat who say that without being piled on? They have not given as they've lost more conservative members like Joe Manchin to retirement or to defeat, they have not given the people much space to say, I'm a different kind of Democrat.
Precisely right. Dave Weigel at Semaphore, SEMAFOR, semaphore.com. Dave, always a pleasure to catch up with you. Thank you, man. Great work. Great to have you on the program. So I don't want to believe this, but I do. Sometimes you have to when it's true. There are people in Washington hoping for more murder and carjacking so that Donald Trump can be proven wrong. Depressing but true. Sometimes you got to stare down the truth. There's a little history to be had here because it was on this album called Main Course. You had Jive Talkin' and you had Nights on Broadway. And a little something happened on Nights on Broadway. You have to understand, this is 1975. The Bee Gees had been known for things like I Started a Joke, To Love Somebody, How Do You Mend a Broken Heart, just these wonderful 60s, early 70s records. They're already burned into the brains of musical excellence. And what they had achieved is something pretty remarkable. This was a bit of a reset, more toward something more danceable, one might say. And on Nights on Broadway, there's a part where you hear Barry Gibb go, "Blame it all," it goes a little falsetto. "Blame it on the Nights on Broadway," and so he does that. And the producer's booth, they go, "Hey, that's good. Let's do that some more." And thus Barry Gibb's life was changed forever. So there we go. Okay, I have had the phone screen vanish in front of my face, so let me go ahead and try to recall that. I do seem to recall Dave in Pittsburgh. If you guys can press the button on that, let's say hi to Dave and see what is on his mind and everybody else that follows. 1-800-520-1234. Dave, welcome, sir. How you doing?
Good. I thought you was going to do a Mike Gallagher on me, and I wait an hour to get on his show, and they hang up. They say, "Okay, the show's over."
Not at all.
So,
not at all.
mean, I waited a long time, but
nice to have you.
I'm a true Trump supporter. He's the best president we ever had, and what they tried doing to him is actually criminal. And when you try to say, "Oh, if they get a bad reputation, that's worse than going to jail," that's a lie. Have you ever been in jail?
I have not, and I hope to never have a bad reputation.
They locked up. They tried locking him up. They wanted to lock him up. They tried shooting him 3 times. They impeached him twice, and they put 37 felony charges on him that were already past the statute of limitation. What more could you do to a human being?
So it's kind of a parlor game. What's worse, jail or reputational damage?
Really not.
But here's the thing. Let's say it's a kind of a flight of fancy. Let's say that any of these figures that we hold in proper contempt were to actually go serve 3-4 years of prison. They would come out and it would be there'd be a red carpet. They would be feted and they would be lifted up. It would be because they would have paid their debt. They would have paid their debt to society. They would have paid their debt to society. I mean, it'd all be their side. I don't mean you or me, but I mean there would be
Obama, Clinton, Schumer, Schiff, Comey. They should all be behind bars.
Look, I know. I totally get it. I totally get it. There's something about a lifetime of not being as historically well regarded. That lasts a lifetime. Jail lasts 3 years, and then you're kind of a hero. Let me go ahead and pause. Let's give him a minute. Let's go to Pablo in Orlando. Welcome, sir. Hey, Mark Davis in for you. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
Good, thank you.
All right, look, just to follow on what the gentleman was saying, I have similar idea, but not necessarily jail, because for that reason, they'll come out, the left will give them the red carpet and all that, they'll write books and, get a bigger place in Martha's Vineyard. However, what I would like to see, Obama, and as a black guy from New York, I never voted for him any time. My father always taught me, beware the shiny man. Okay, so with that being said, everything that he did as president, he has to bring it up before Congress. But let whoever's going to run the boards in Congress have all the evidence first, so that if Obama does lie, now he's not in contempt as a president, but as a private citizen. Then you can do what you want. But the main thing is to have it broadcast to every station, every website, whatever, all simulcast, saying exactly what he did to Trump.
I think that would be instructive, and we may be looking at some hearings that may involve swearing some people in to describe exactly that, so the American people can absorb it. Thanks, sir. Thank you, Pablo. Appreciate it very, very much. Alrighty, 1-800-520-1234. That's a little Sonny and Cher, 1965. I got you, babe. Doing the number one records, 1995, 85, 75, 65, working our way through all of this. Josh Kraushaar is here. I want to do 2 things. Josh is great, doing so many things on Fox as a political analyst, so many great things at Jewish Insider. Let's do some summit talk, and then I got to do some Gaza. Josh, welcome. Great to have you. How you doing?
Mark, great to be back with you.
Great to have you. So your thoughts. I see now, I can't wait sort of for the optics of this. I see that Bret Baier is going to interview Trump on Air Force One heading to the Alaska summit, and that they're trying to get an interview with Putin or a Russian representative. How do you think this whole summit's going to play out for those of us who are just consuming it in the media?
Well, it will be must-see TV. I'm going to be watching Brett's interview with the president. There may be an interview with the Russian leader, Russian official. This is high-stakes diplomacy, Mark, but I think that behind the scenes, there's a lowering of expectations that, I mean, as much as Trump would like to get a ceasefire, would like to get some kind of deal struck, the reality is Russia has shown no sign of accommodating any hopes from the United States side. And I am. You don't hear Trump and folks in the administration lower expectations, but privately they are trying to not get people's hopes up that there's going to be grand diplomacy. There may be a follow-up meeting after this Alaska summit, but the reality on the ground is going to make it difficult for any real movement. I think even despite the high profile meeting this Friday.
I think you're right about that because Trump, of course, has this properly earned mantle as a deal maker, a broker of all kinds of things, able to forge amazing results when things look like they're stacked against him. This may be one of the toughest challenges yet. Last thing on this before we go to the Middle East, what do you think? It's the broadest question ever. What does America want? I guess what does the Trump base want? Without regard to politics, what will make most Americans happy in terms of what Trump is able to do with regard to crafting some type of end to this 3-year conflict?
Well, look, I think the general American sentiment, the people who don't really play partisan politics, but just want to see, well, there's an instinct in the American public who don't follow the details of all these crises closely, that, they just don't want to see the war. I mean, the images that you see from Ukraine, that Russia and the war that Russia started several years ago has just played an awful toll. And, I think there is some concern that Trump it's kind of like a roller coaster ride following Trump and sort of his positions vis-a-vis Putin. I think one of the low points in our diplomacy was when Trump and Vance browbeated Ukrainian leader Zelensky in the White House. But Trump clearly learned from that lesson, changed his tune, was very tough in the last month and a half when it came to Putin. But ultimately, like the devil's going to be in the details. And what happens Friday is going to be a test of whether that muscular diplomacy can actually pay off. Russia has not budged an inch. They have not made any notable concessions that I've seen, even with their willingness to come to Alaska and have this conversation. So, I think a good deal is one where, both sides are going to have to make some concessions. But so far, everything I've seen and seen reported is the concessions that are being talked about are mainly coming from Ukraine and not from Russia.
Let's go to Israel and Gaza. You cover it a lot. You dig deep into it. So here, as a supporter of Israel, I take a look at all the stories of starvation, the stories of death, the stories of carnage. It's a war. There's a reason why they say war is hell. It's because it is. I grow very tired of hearing casualty totals reported breathlessly from the Gaza Defense Ministry or the Gaza Health Authorities, who lie through their teeth every day. So in a narrative that comes every day, there's suffering and starvation in Gaza, and everybody says it's Netanyahu who wants this. It's part of his grotesque offensive. What is the best answer to that?
Well, the best answer is Israel, when most of the Israeli public wants to see Hamas surrender and defeated. And it's been as much success as Israel has had in defeating Hezbollah in the north of the country and really deterring Iran's nuclear program with the help of the United States. They have not had They've had success taking out Hamas's military leaders, but they've sort of gotten bogged down in this really a counterinsurgency. And given how much of the population in Gaza has sympathy towards Hamas, it's hard really to kind of find an end game outside of Hamas utterly being destroyed and removed from power in the Gaza Strip. Look, I thought we've talked to Hugh about this, Mark, but after Israel's remarkable defeat in the so-called 12-day war with Iran, there was an argument to be had that Bibi Netanyahu could have sort of pocketed the huge victory, got a bump in his political support, and could have won. I think at least for the time being, perhaps could have scaled down operations in Gaza and left future battles for basically declared victory and left any created a buffer on the border with Israel and taken the political capital from that. I think Hamas is very much degraded from where it was on October 7th. It's not defeated. It's going to be a challenge. And the Israeli public is very war weary right now, given the losses their soldiers have been suffering serving in Gaza. So, I think I always look at Israeli public opinion. There's a lot of folks that in this country, especially on the Democratic Party, have really turned hostile towards Israel. But the real test is where the Israeli public is. And I think the public really wants some kind of deal, if possible, to get the remaining 20 hostages home in exchange for perhaps an end, at least for now, to the war.
And in about 30 seconds, how likely is that?
I don't see this happening in the short term. And clearly, the Israeli government has announced a military operation over the next couple months in Gaza City. So I don't see this ending anytime soon. But really, the ball may be in the Trump administration's court. They certainly have Bibi Netanyahu's ear, and if they say that they think it's in both countries' interests to cut a deal rather than continue the military operation, that could have a big impact in Netanyahu's thinking.
Josh Krashower, always a pleasure. Great to hear you when Hugh's doing the show. Great to talk to you when I am. Thank you, man. The great Josh Krashower. All right, let's wrap up this hour. I might be able to hop back onto a call here in our final segment. Then we will cruise on into the final hour. Jim Talent is going to join us in that hour, and so will you at 1-800-520-1234, 1-800-520-1234. Do we have enough trouble spots in the world? There are always a lot of trouble spots in the world. There's never a time when there have not been. But having Trump in charge and a strong America simply gives us some level of optimism at seeing something that resembles progress. Let's talk about what that progress looks like to you. 1-800-520-1234. Mark Davis in for Hugh. Glad you were here on this Thursday. Hey, for all the listeners out there, you've heard Hugh talk about identity theft before. It's stressful. It's time-consuming, a big, big problem to fix. That's why you can't take online protection lightly anymore. Your go-to cybersecurity solution needs to be our friends at WebRoot, WEBROOT, right now. You can get 50% off WebRoot Total Protection or WebRoot Essentials when you go to webroot.com/Hewitt. Did you know about every 2 seconds an identity is stolen in the U.S.? It takes about 100 or 200 hours to fix it. With WebRoot, you can protect your identity up to 5 devices or even cover the whole family with up to 10 identities and 10 devices. You get password manager, system optimizer, antivirus protection against malware, ransomwares, phishing scams. It's just a wonderful, wonderful thing at WebRoot. You get protection up to $1 million in reimbursement for stolen funds. And WebRoot includes a VPN for up to 10 devices, unlimited cloud backup. Get 50% off WebRoot Total Protection or WebRoot Essentials today at webroot.com/Hewitt. That is webroot.com/Hewitt. Live a better digital life with WebRoot. All right, let's see what's going on in various people's lives. And Carlos in Port St. Lucie, Florida. Hit the button, guys. I just lost the screen. Carlos, Port St. Lucie, welcome. How you doing, sir? You get to take us out.
Thank you for taking my call. Hey,
Hi.
Paul Manafort, Steve Bannon, Michael Flynn, they all got arrested for lying to Congress or lying to the FBI, allegedly.
Yep.
How come we can't arrest nobody in the Obama side for creating a coup, trying to turn over our government? That's why I'm lost. So if you lie is more powerful than trying to destroy our government, that's where I'm lost.
I think you have painted a really good analogy, Carlos, and thank you. It's a good point on which to conclude. They came after all kinds of people in Trump world, and most of those were sham charges that deservedly went nowhere. In the case of what Team Obama was doing, what Clapper and Comey and what all of these scoundrels and weasels were doing in an attempt to smear and cripple Trump as he came in for the beginning of his first term, these are things that involve actual fraud. These are things that involve actual lying. And as it'll be interesting to see just how truthful people are if they are, boy, how much time have we got for hearings these days? It's a busy time for hearings. We got the auto pen hearings. We've got the hearings that are kind of related to that, involving the people on Team Biden who were willing, in what I still believe is the biggest scandal in recent American political history, and that is the people who willfully said, yeah, that guy's fine. That he's fine. He'll be. America is totally safe and secure with 4 more years of a guy who didn't look like he could go for 4 more hours. So, do we have room to have hearings of people on what the Obama team did as they were on their way out the door in 2017? I think we do. I know what else we got time for. Another hour with your thoughts. 1-800-520-1234. Hey, everybody. Welcome to hour number 3 of the Hugh Hewitt Show, Salem Radio Network, Salem News Channel. Whether you're listening or watching, we are grateful. Mark Davis, grateful to be here. I'm the happy morning host at 6:60 a.m. The Answer in Dallas, Fort Worth. That's my morning job. And then I spend the rest of the day doing various things like showing up here when various shows need me to guest host. And it is always a pleasure to be in here when Hugh is away. And so I look forward to this final hour. We're going to talk to Jim Talent here in a little bit. I'm going to have, it's funny, Dwayne and I talked during the breaks. And he said, you know, Mark, I'm really surprised you didn't come out here and riff at some point yesterday or today about the death of storied Apollo astronaut Jim Lovell, because I may be one of the foremost space dorks in American radio and media in general. And so I will, if that is expected of me, either in-house or around the country, I'll do that here in a segment or two. But let's begin this hour with some various things that are in the news and your opportunity to get with me at 1-800-520-1234, 1-800-520-1234. Your expectations on Trump and Putin summit, your thoughts on the 90th anniversary of Social Security. Has this been a near century-long mistake? Is this something we should get rid of and let people fend for themselves, keep their own money, invest their own money? Do you have any doubt that you could have done eons better, millions better, by keeping your own money than what Social Security has done for you? Is there any path to progress there? 1-800-520-1234. And we're also looking at the streets of Washington and noticing that they already seem safer. How terrible is it if safer streets are bad news for your political party? How pitiful is it when safe, strong borders are bad news for your party? How troubling is it when gender sanity and people realizing that we don't have 47 genders, boys can't become girls, and government employees aren't going to have their dang pronouns in their email signature blocks anymore? We're done with that nonsense. How tough is it for you when it is your political party that tried to foist all that on us? A lot of things, large and small, on our minds, and so share what's on your mind with us. Mark Davis in for you, 1-800-520-1234, 1-800-520-1234. Now, it was at just about it was 24-ish hours ago, at the end of yesterday's Hugh Hewitt show, that I shared with you the breaking news of the Melania Hunter Biden threat of a $1 billion lawsuit. Hunter, in that profanity-laced rant with that podcast called Channel 5 with some guy, who the heck was that again? It was, and he said on that particular occasion that, Jeffrey Epstein, in that environment, that's where Donald and Melania Trump met. Yesterday, I shared with you at the end of the show that Melania's attorneys had gotten, it's the Channel 5 podcast with Andrew Callahan, where they're sitting out there under that tree and Hunter's just working a blue streak and dropping F-bombs and all these various things. And so I have an update for you. Hunter has responded on that very same podcast to Melania's attorneys saying, we need you to take that episode down. We need you to apologize profusely for false, defamatory, incendiary comments. And if you don't do that, we may be coming after you for $1 billion. Two-word answer, well, more than two, but the first two from Hunter Biden are, F that. He goes on to say, that's not going to happen. So Andrew Callahan, the podcast guy, had offered Hunter the opportunity to apologize. Hey, you want to apologize for that claim that Epstein introduced Melania to Trump? Quote from Mr. Callahan, Mrs. Trump is looking for $1 billion in damage if we don't take the video down and if Hunter here doesn't issue a formal apology. So now we're here maybe to give you the platform to apologize to the First Lady for your statements that you made about her possible connection to Jeffrey Epstein. And that's where you get the Hunter Biden F that reply. Oh, he went on. I think they're bullies. They think that $1 billion is going to scare me. I have this to say to them. If they want to sit down for a deposition and clarify the nature of the relationship between Epstein, if the president, the first lady want to do that, and all the known associates around them at the time, at whatever time they met, I'm more than happy to provide them the platform to be able to do it. Well, this is either the dumbest thing Hunter has ever done, and that's a long list, because he's going to get sued. I don't know if he's going to get $1 billion, but or if Melania will, or if she'll get anything, but he'll find himself in court for defamation. But will that prevail? Defamation is hard to prove. If I say something just terrible about you, that's not your favorite day, of course, But your ability to take action against me, a whole lot of it, there has to be the subject of malice. We've all heard of, remember, absence of malice. Who was it? Was that Sally Field and Paul Newman? About a journalistic point where somebody had said something really derogatory, really incendiary, really provocative. The question was that none of that mattered. What mattered was it knowably false? Because if somebody says something that you think is true, they're pretty safe. So, well, I thought it was true. Sorry. It has to be knowably false. And yeah, it has to be said with malice, not just something you're riffing about just to, fill time. So the malice part is absolutely in concrete. Guaranteed that the malice thing is there. Yes, he obviously, hates everybody in Trump world. But what is involved judicially in proving that that Epstein had nothing to do with Melania and Donald meeting? There's no evidence of that being true, but absence of, one of my favorite sentences, absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. Know what I mean? Oh, there's no evidence of that. Doesn't mean it's not true. And by the way, I don't care. And I suppose if I say I wonder, why Melania cares, it's about her. It's about her, and it's about her husband, who's the president. I know why the president would care, because Epstein is just a lightning rod for everything these days. So, chapter 1, chapter 1, Hunter goes on this podcast and says, oh yeah, the relationship is, the involvement there, the connections are wide and deep. And that's how Trump and Melania met. Chapter 2, Melania says, I'm going to sue you for $1 billion if that podcast guy doesn't take that podcast episode down, and if you don't admit to how false and defamatory the things were that you said, and if you don't apologize to me. And chapter 3 is Hunter Biden says, pound sand, or words to that effect. So where does that go from here? I guess the ball is back in the court of Melania and her attorneys. All right, I tell you what, there are a couple of things we're going to do coming up. Condoleezza Rice. What do you think of Condoleezza Rice? I love her. She's had a lot of interesting jobs. I think, did I hear it said of Condoleezza Rice that the thing she wants to be more than anything else is NFL commissioner? And boy, she can have that gig anytime for me. That'd be an upgrade. But of the jobs that she has had, she has so impressively dispatched them that there have been those who have said that maybe the job she needs to have is President of the United States. And it was an attractive and alluring and sort of scintillating thing to think about her. And yes, an African-American woman. I don't care what race or sex anybody is, but when somebody who is not white or not male is a big Republican standard bearer, I think that's kind of a plus for our side. I don't know what I thought about that, because I don't think she's particularly conservative on a number of things, but she has foreign policy wisdom. What does she have to say about the coming summit? We'll find out next. Mark Davison for Hugh, Salem News Channel, Salem Radio Network. You stay here.
Hold it right there. I'm back from vacation. Not really. I pre-recorded this on Friday. It's my Relief Factor segment, because I take Relief Factor with me on vacation, just like I take it every day on this program. And we're going to remind you every hour, even when I'm out on vacation, that Relief Factor does indeed work. If you take it every single day, you will feel much better, because it works with your body's anti-inflammatory system to reduce the minor aches and pains that come with exercise and aging. You should be doing the former. You're definitely doing the latter. Every day, Relief Factor means more and more to a comfortable life. Stop using the over-the-counter meds. Try it the old-fashioned way. Icarian curcumin with Veratron Omega. And the starter pack, $19.95, gets you 3 weeks of Relief Factor. You take 3 on the first day, every day for the first week, 2 on the second week, every day on the second week, and then 1 on the third week, and then forever after. 1-800, the number 4 in the word relief, 1-800, the number 4 in the word relief, or visit their website, relieffactor.com. Find that starter pack for $19.95, less than $1 a day at relieffactor.com.
Number 1 record in America, 70 years ago, 1955 this week, Ricky Nelson, Poor Little Fool. And with that, our trip through the time tunnel is complete. We got a couple more songs to play. One will be the number one album from 1975, and the other, at the end of the show, I'm going to cheat and borrow a huge musical birthday for me from tomorrow, because I'm not going to be here tomorrow. If I were, I would do it, but I'm not, so I'm going to do it today. So number one record 30 years ago, 1995, TLC, Waterfalls. 40 years ago, Tears for Fears, Shout. 50 years ago, Bee Gees, Jive Talking. 60 years ago, Sonny and Cher, I Got You, Babe. And there's Ricky Nelson, Poor Little Fool. All righty. Phone number is 1-800-520-1234. Condi on the summit in just a moment. But first up, let's roll down the highway to Midlothian, Texas. Dean, Mark Davis in for you. How you doing on this Thursday?
Well, first of all, with all deference to our good friend Hugh Hewitt, it is a pleasure to talk to the best talk show host in the country.
Well, so, I'll debate you on that. But thank you very much. You're very kind.
Well, that's what I think. No, Mark, I wanted to kind of talk to the point you made earlier about this term being exponentially better than it might have otherwise been. I don't think Tulsi Gabbard would have happened had he won consecutive terms. I don't think enough time would have passed to uncover the things that she's uncovering. I don't think the Epstein argument that they keep trying to pin on President Trump would be negated because consecutive terms would have looked like he withheld releasing, because they certainly would have released during the Biden administration had there been something to see.
Well, that's the argument I've used forever. That's how you know. That's how you just absolutely know that there's no high visibility famous person Epstein client list. Because if there were, there'd be Republicans and Democrats on it. Any Republicans on it would have been totally leaked by the Bidens. It's the one thing they could do well, it's an attempt on a daily basis to smear Republicans. The absence of that means that the whole client list thing is largely a myth.
Very much agree, but I just think this second term has set up perfectly for him to be as successful as he has been.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of good things to come.
No doubt. Dean, thank you. Thank you for your kind words on the point. And this is, it's hard to intellectually and emotionally navigate. 2020 was a nightmare. It was, we got screwed so brutally by states in the wake of COVID panic, changing election procedures unconstitutionally on the fly. Countless votes were tabulated that should not have been. And I literally mean that, countless. We'll never know exactly how many there were. That's why everybody said, well, why didn't a judge in Arizona just say, slam down a gavel and say Trump won? He didn't know. I don't know by how many or numerically. But I don't know is not enough. It was an unacceptable, unfathomable result. And that means that the Congress should have determined this election result after the Supreme Court voided the electoral tally. But they didn't have the spine to do it. It was miserable, and it gave us 4 miserable years of Biden. But we survived. We made it, didn't we? No skin of our teeth. And now here we are. And I'll just flat tell you, I'll take where we are. Right now, August of 2025, this term, with the 3 and a fraction years ahead of us, not just for having this job, as an American, as a conservative, I am thrilled. So anyway, your thoughts are welcome. 1-800-520-1234. Okay, so Condi Rice, I don't know if I ever wanted her to be president. There are a couple of issues where I just don't think she's conservative enough. But they don't come much smarter on foreign policy. Brett Baer talked to her last night about what she looks for in the Trump-Putin summit.
Putin, in a sense, needs him more than he needs Putin. Yes, he needs Putin to stop this war, but he holds the options, which he's articulated, of putting more pressure on a Russian economy that is really in pretty dire straits when the Russians themselves, through their very fine central banker, start to talk about the dark problems that the Russian economy has. I think maybe people are trying to say, even Russians are trying to say to Vladimir Putin, we can't fight this war forever. Secondly, I think that you have the possibilities with the Russians to say to them, we are not going to do this over the heads of the Ukrainians because they have fought too hard. And that means that there's nothing wrong with having a discussion with Putin, But nothing can be a proposal that looks like an American-Russian proposal on how this war stops. The Europeans are going to be critical to whatever ceasefire eventually obtains. The Europeans are going to really be critical to making it work. Now, I'd be the first to say I think this war does need to stop, and it may have to stop with some inconclusive elements on how the territory will eventually look. I think Ukraine can be rebuilt. I think their defense industries are quite remarkable. They can continue to hold at risk things that the Russians care about, as they showed in what they did against the strategic bombing force. So let's not think of the Ukrainians as having no cards. They do have cards. And let's not think of the Russians as having all the cards. They don't have all the cards. And if you go in with that mentality, I think this will come out just fine.
Knowing Putin, why do you think he agrees to this sit down? From a place of concern or from a place of trying to get his way in that room one-on-one?
Oh, I think it's probably a little bit of both. I do think he's concerned. And I think he just has a hard time accepting that he can't crush Ukraine. A country that he doesn't actually believe is a country. He told us it was a made-up country. But now, with the threats against the Russian economy, with the shot across the bow about secondary sanctions, maybe it's starting to occur to him that he needs to stop this war. But he's certainly trying to deflect any action that the president might take. And so maybe he hopes that going into the room, he can once again use words to convince the president that he still wants peace. But I would just hope that the president remembers what he said very eloquently, that he got off the phone with Putin and they bombed Ukraine that night. That's the true Vladimir Putin.
So there we are. And what we have amid all of this is expectations that vary according to what your goals are. And I think this is going to be interesting to see not just what happens in Alaska, but how it plays in America, how it plays around the world. What's your wish list? What's your prayer? I'm literally praying for the president to have success. Franklin Graham, as I mentioned yesterday, had a post that said we should pray for our president. We should pray for President Putin to be open to something sensible that could lead to an end to the war. We should pray for Zelensky to be open to things that will end the war. Ending the war is the moral locomotive dragging the rest of the train. From the #1 album in America 50 years ago, Eagles, One of These Nights, and After the Thrill Is Gone. I know we could have done Lion Eyes. You heard that a million times. We do deep cuts around here when I'm filling in for you. Mark Davis from 660 AM The Answer in Dallas, Fort Worth. Glad you are here. In a moment, some recollections about an American hero that we lost this past week. But right now, don't ever lose track of this. ALEC. The magnificent people of ALEC, the American Legislative Exchange Council. Look at the things that they are doing. There are 17 states with universal school choice programs. ALEC has provided leadership in this. In West Virginia, they've been leading the charge in securing elections in 2025. Again, ALEC providing the kind of guidance that is needed to explicitly require U.S. citizenship for voting at every level of government. Keeping voter rolls current by flagging inactive voters after 2 years rather than 4, banning the ridiculousness of ranked choice voting, requiring municipal elections to be held on the same day as statewide primaries or general elections, all kinds of things that just make elections better. That's out of West Virginia with leadership from folks at ALEC, the American Legislative Exchange Council. Learn more at alec.org/Hugh, alec.org/Hugh, to learn more about what's happening in your state and watch federalism in action. They got a free weekly newsletter. Get it at alec.org/Hugh. And don't forget to check how your state ranks in the country. Go to richstatespoorstates.com, richstatespoorstates.com. Well, my life is richer by something that this career has afforded me. How many kids were 10, 11, 12-ish when we're going to the moon and landing on the moon? Millions. How many of them got to grow up, do radio shows, do some broadcasting, and meet some of these heroes and share time with them, I can't believe my good fortune. Walt Cunningham was on the Apollo 7 crew, the first Apollo mission in October of 1968. And on its 40th anniversary, he gathered some of his buddies. They did an event at the Frontiers of Flight Museum in Dallas, and I got to MC a panel discussion with Walt, and he said, yeah, I think so. I think some of the guys are coming. Yeah, the guys. A couple of the guys were Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin. Pinch me. I can't believe this. But it was the following year in some years later in 2017, that I got the chance to host something at the same museum with Jim Lovell and Fred Hayes, who of course were on Apollo 13 and very nearly died. And Jim Lovell passed away over this past weekend at the age of 97. They don't make heroes like this anymore. They don't make Americans like this anymore. They don't make men like this anymore. I know that it is the footprints of Neil Armstrong that are the historical benchmark, but a few months earlier than that, again, when I'm 11 years old, I am watching at Christmas time as the Apollo 8 crew, the first people to go to the moon, were Jim Lovell, Frank Borman, and Bill Anders on the Apollo 8 mission at Christmas time, 1968. They are the first people to truly leave the Earth. They'd go to the moon, orbit it, and come back just to check out the hardware before we went there and landed the following year. And Jim Lovell and Frank Borman and Bill Anders read from the book of Genesis, drove Madeline Murray O'Hare crazy, which made me love it even more, and said, as that magnificent mission was that magnificent night was ending, from the crew of Apollo 8, we close with good night, good luck, a Merry Christmas, and God bless all of you on the good earth. Those of us who are here on the good earth, every night when you go up and the moon was full on Saturday, this past Saturday. So you could see the full face of that other world that Jim Lovell never got to walk on because of the Apollo 13 explosion. But he did so very, very much. He spent 2 weeks in a Gemini 7 capsule, which is like spending 2 weeks in a Volkswagen Beetle with future crewmate Frank Borman, just blazing the trail to the moon. He blazed the trail on Apollo 8. And in Apollo 13, the wisdom and heroism of Lovell and Hayes and Jack Swigert brought them back alive. It was, in a way, as remarkable as the missions where we went to the moon successfully. So to a fine Navy man, fair winds and following seas. To Jim Lovell, his wife Marilyn passed away a couple of years ago. On the lunar surface, if you look at that full moon on a given in the lower right quadrant, if you've got a good telescope, you don't need one, but you can just know that it's there. There's the Sea of Fertility. And in that Sea of Fertility, along the border of that, there's a mountain that Jim Lovell named for his wife, Marilyn, on that Apollo 8 mission in 1968. In a few days here, Jim Lovell will be laid alongside Marilyn at the United States Naval Academy. Rest in peace to the great Jim Lovell. Remember these heroes every day. Remember them always. Guest host privilege. Whenever I show up and do Hugh Hewitt, I bring a lot of chart history, a lot of musical birthdays. Since I'm not doing tomorrow's show, I'm borrowing into tomorrow because August 15th, tomorrow, is that man's 77th birthday, Tom Johnston, at the front vocals and guitar, and along with Pat Simmons for the earlier, what I like to refer to as the real Doobie Brothers. Not to throw shade at Michael McDonald, who's enormously talented, but the whole minute by minute taking it to the streets, that was just a different thing. I'm a China Grove, listen to the music, long train running, Captain and Me, et cetera kind of guy. Happy birthday tomorrow to Tom Johnston. Alrighty, hey, Jim Talent is here. Let's talk about some things going on in the news. You know Jim, chairman of the Reagan Institute's National Leadership Council, always a guest on the Hugh Hewitt Show. I always love hearing you, and I love being here and being able to talk to you. How you doing today, sir?
I'm doing fine, Mark. You got great taste in music.
Why, thank you, sir. Appreciate that very, very much. Hey, was your childhood in Missouri? Or what was on the playlist as you envisioned a future as a congressman?
I was born and reared outside of St. Louis. I'm a meat and potatoes Midwesterner, and I never moved. I flew home all those years in the Congress, almost every weekend. My kids, we raised them in St. Louis, and Washington's fine. It's going to be safer in a month or so than it is now, but I never wanted to raise the family there.
You read my mind at exactly where I wanted to go. You know a lot about Washington. You've been, you've walked those streets, walked the halls of Congress. You know a lot about D.C. as an environment. I grew up there in the Maryland suburbs in the 70s. And so this is kind of personal to me because these are neighborhoods I know, and I want them to be safer. Every American should want them to be safer. Am I being too bitter or too cynical when I observe that there are people in D.C. and around the country who hate the fact that D.C. will be cleaner and safer because it will accrue to the benefit of Trump's reputation?
I think those affected by Trump derangement syndrome, yeah. I don't think that's going to include a lot of the residents in the District of Columbia, even though they didn't vote for him, because they're the ones who have to live with this. Look, Washington's like all big cities, Mark. It has its areas that are more dangerous. But when we get people carjacked and killed within a few blocks of the Capitol, that's a problem. And this is a federal enclave. It is fully within the rights of the federal government to make certain that the district is secure. As a matter of fact, Mark, in the 90s, and I was there when this happened, I was there when we did it. We took over the District of Columbia government, established the Financial Control Board, and gave it the power over everything that the mayor and the city council did, and turned the district around in about 5 years. So it's not that bad now, but it's bad, and the president's right to do this.
And it's funny, that means you also remember some of, and it's funny because I'd gotten a chance to go back and do a few years of talk shows in the 90s. So I'm doing radio and you're doing congressional things in the House and Senate. And DC statehood was a big deal then. And they had license plates that said taxation without representation. If you can't stand it, get out. There's the door. Go live in Maryland. Go live in Virginia. Go live in St. Louis. Go live wherever you want if that's so incredibly unbearable. The founding fathers never intended for the capital city to be a state or to be within a state.
Yeah, that's exactly what the Constitution says. It can't become a state. It shouldn't become a state. We don't want the federal government to have two senators. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. I mean, I get the argument for Puerto Rico, for example, although they've never voted for statehood there. But no, we're not going to make the district of these kinds of proposals that I'm seeing coming out of the Democrats now and out of the mainstream leaders. They're just very extreme. Trump, on the other hand, is occupying the center. I mean, he's securing the border, fighting crime, wants to produce energy. These are all mainstream objectives, and it's not a surprise that the people support him on all these various issues.
So, speaking of the president, let's spend our last couple of minutes on what's going to fill his days as we head into the weekend. What are your thoughts, your expectations, your hopes for the Trump-Putin summit?
Well, we know one thing because Putin agreed to this. We know he's scared of the sanctions. He doesn't want his shadow fleet sanctioned. That's how he sells his oil. He doesn't want the tariffs. He doesn't want the secondary sanctions on his banks. So Trump's found that out. He's found out what Putin doesn't want. So I think what Putin's going to do is he's going to do two things. He's going to try and talk Trump out of doing that. And he's going to try and as a condition of negotiations, what he knows he can't get at the negotiating table, which is compromising Ukrainian sovereignty, their right to rebuild their armed forces, to have economic connections with the West. I think there's a big swath of Donetsk province he hasn't been able to conquer. That the Ukrainians have prepared defenses in depth in, and he'd like to get that. I don't think he's going to get any of that. Now, I think because I think Trump's got a bottom line in mind already, and it doesn't include that. So I don't think much is going to happen here. They're going to break up with some statements, and then Trump is going to have to decide whether he wants to impose the sanctions. And I think there's a very good chance he will. And then the ball will go back to Putin's court.
I think that's sound analysis. So does that mean that maybe expectations are a little too high for anyone, the president, any of his supporters, any of his detractors, that the expectations are too high, that something really will happen to tie a bow around this, that we'll really be looking at the end of this war by
the president's style. You know the president's style. And when he was campaigning, he said, well, I'll get peace there in 24 hours. This is, of course, the president's style. I think he is going to get peace there. I think it's going to take a little bit longer. Look, this war, Mark, has been a disaster for Russia, whatever else happens. Finland and Sweden are now in NATO. NATO is increasing their defense expenditures. Western Europe's dependence on Russian energy has been switched to the United States. These are enormous geostrategic disasters for Putin. And I think one of the reasons he doesn't want to end the war is once the war's over, he's going to have to explain to the Russian people why he sacrificed 1 million Russians, then endured all those disasters and gained territory roughly half the size of the state of New York. That's what he's gotten out of this. So it was always going to be difficult to get him to the table. I think Trump will do it eventually, but I don't expect it to happen this weekend.
Jim Talent, thank you. As always, it's great to hear you when I'm just driving around listening, and great to talk to you when I get to host here on the Hugh Hewitt Show, Salem News Channel, Salem Radio Network. Well, let's have a couple of final thoughts together, shall we? And we'll do it next. Oh, what a long, strange trip it's been. Quoting the Grateful Dead on the Hugh Hewitt Show. There's only a couple of ways to do that. And one is to indicate what a joy it's been to hang out here. And thank you to Dwayne and Adam and Harley for yesterday and today. I'll be back whenever they ask. And back, I'm cropping up on various shows. I'm doing a couple of Stigals. Getting up in the middle of the night to do that thing. What was I thinking? It is always a pleasure to be here in the Salem Radio Network and the Salem News Channel, wherever they ask me. My usual exploits, of course, every day are as the morning host at 6:60 a.m. The Answer in Dallas, Fort Worth. You can go to 660amtheanswer.com and click podcasts and catch pretty well every show I've ever done. This week, it's been, if you want to do kind of a deep dive on the adventure that's been taking place right here in my realm of Texas, involving the wayward and soon-to-return Texas Democrats and that whole nonsense. We've been through something that may be happening in your state as well. All the gummy shops and the THC nonsense. I want to ban every single bit of that garbage. Governor Greg Abbott, whom I really like, is stopping just short of that, maybe stopping way short of that, by saying, well, let's keep it legal, but let's just put it where kids can't get it and where the police are going to make sure that there's nothing on the shelves that has too much THC in it, like it's possible to police 8,000 shops. And I had him on the show yesterday morning, and he was talking about, well, the TABC, the Texas Alcohol Beverage Control people, they can just sort of monitor that like they do to make sure that restaurants aren't, serving a beer to a 15-year-old. Oh, yeah, they got plenty of free time on their hands. Life just gets much simpler, and it gets much better if we reach a prevailing truth about something. And that is that there is no way in which society gets better with the legalization of more intoxicants. So the next time somebody, if you're carrying that view around with you, next time somebody, gets up in your grill and says, whoa, alcohol's legal, so why not this? I know alcohol's legal. We tried to get rid of that, didn't work, so that's kind of baked in. And so the question now is, are we going to have more intoxicants legalized? My answer will always be a hard no. My answer will always be yes when they ask me to come hang out here on the Hugh Hewitt Show. So he'll be back next week. Tomorrow's Friday. We'll cruise into that. And just on the things we've talked about today, I don't know what exactly to expect of the Trump-Putin summit. I would like to think that there is something about the authority and forcefulness and rationality and strength. American strength is good for the whole world. So let's hope that plays out, and whatever happens, it'll be covered on tomorrow's Hugh Hewitt Show and by Hugh himself when he comes back on Monday. In the meantime, I'm Mark Davis. Follow me on Twitter @MarkDavis, which kind of makes sense, the old X account, and I'll see you there.